right thing.
This isn't a map.
This is your home.
Oh man, I got this. Take one for me too, man. Yeah.
Who will survive? What will be left of them? What's up, Harbor Fiends? It's your boy, Mickey Van. What's up? I'm here with my two brothers. JR the villain. I'm gonna start with you. You know why? Because you're the man, the myth, the legend. What up, bro?
Are you guys ready to talk about this? Ding, 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 ding. Oh, I can't wait to talk about this one. Yeah, I figured this is like one of the forgotten horror icons. The least talked about, and now we get to talk about him 50 years later. He still live to the hype, or I don't know, the Leatherface just go a little pale face.
Hey, Joe. I was the killer. What up, Joe? How you doing, bro?
It's the Texas motherfucking Chainsaw Massacre. Who would not be happy to talk about that movie? I mean, It's a classic, which is why we're doing it. 50th anniversary. Another fucking movie that I'm older. I don't know why we keep doing this to me, but it's all good. But yeah, no, I mean, Leatherface. I mean, as JR said, iconic. And then Netflix came around. In this episode, we will be discussing the 1974 movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper. It stars Marilyn Burns as Sally, Paul A. Parton as Franklin, and Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. Five friends head out to a rural Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across what appears to be a deserted house, only to discover something sinister within. Something armed with a chainsaw.
My man, Joe the psychologist. I always joke around when we do bad movies, like, who was responsible for this one? But I know you're gonna take full credit. You deserve it. I'm assuming you're the one that pushed for this film to be on the schedule.
I will say that JR reminded me of it, but it was on my list. But JR was like, "Hey,
all right, you know what? Let's give JR.
It is the 50th.
Let's give him his flowers, bro."
Yeah, no, he did. He goes.
Man.
He's like, bro, you're making our list, and Texas turns 50, and I'm like, shit, you're right.
That's right.
When I first saw this movie, it was during when movies become cult classics, which sometimes involves with the college culture. I had went to visit the girlfriend of a cousin.
Oh no! Wait a minute! College culture, JR. That's how we started the whole "ass is the final guy" statement. Remember his long tirade?
I did it. I know.
College culture. Oh no!
And that's where we are. So, but yeah. So there's. I can't remember which one of the Connecticut universities is over in New Berlin, but we went over there, and on that weekend, I was introduced to A Clockwork Orange, Ash is the Final Guy, Evil Dead, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the one that kind of, yes, even against A Clockwork Orange, just still stuck out. The thing I love, it's the aesthetic of these movies because they are older. So they don't have the crisp cleanliness that the cameras can give us now. So it gives you this like icky feel that you're watching like found footage, like you're actually watching the film of people dying. And even though it's available to stream on Peacock right now and it's 4K remastered, it still has that icky, like you're watching that like the sixth friend that was hanging, or actually it was four of them in the car. So the fifth friend holding the camera that never talked the whole time, that recorded all this going on, feeling to it. I mean, here we are 50 years later, and we're talking about it on our channel. It's timeless. It's classic. Tobe Hooper made this movie that was referenced as one of the goriest, bloodiest, and it lacks all that because a director will do a movie and let your brain see everything without him having to actually put it on the screen. It's a lost art. Not many directors have done that. Tobe Hooper still remains the master of doing a movie that is still thought of as the grossest, bloodiest when it's not.
JR, how old were you? Well, I don't know. I don't want to say how old were you, but at what age, right, did you discover this film? Put it that way.
I would say probably 85, 86. So I was 10, 11.
Yeah.
Because we just came from Puerto Rico in 84. So we didn't watch too many of these movies when we lived in Puerto Rico. You know, every Saturday was Sábado Gigante. And, you know,
Don Francisco!
Espirito and, you know, Chapulín and Chavo del Ocho. So we didn't watch much horror when we lived in Puerto Rico. When we came to the States is where we started diving into the horror. And I remember still to this day, what captivates me about this movie is the beginning sequence hook, where you're given all these newscasts about horrible things happening all over the country, in Texas, Louisiana, everywhere. Just despair, death, doom and gloom is basically kind of tells you where this movie is going to go. And the fact that, you know, it's one of the first movies to actually do that. Because if you go back, you know, it's like that. I think the first 5 to 7 minutes is all about this newscast. And the only time that it breaks is when they step out the car when the guy in the wheelchair has to go basically use the bathroom. So that's where it breaks the whole, you know, that whole sequence. But yeah, this movie still, I mean, you watch it, it's the villains just look so raggedy and just like they don't bath. I know who was it, the one that played the crazy guy. His character, I know they purposely kept rewashing his shirt because they wanted to keep the same color of it throughout the whole movie. He only wore that one shirt throughout the whole movie and was purposely almost died out. That way it doesn't look like it basically stains or anything. So that was an interesting thing when I was looking at some of the trivia about this. But yeah, I mean, it, like Joe said, it doesn't show this massive gore and bloody sequences. And when it does, it happens so quick that it purposely doesn't linger on it. I mean, for me, I think one of the grossest scenes in the whole film, which when you go back and watch the, you know, like the backstory on this is when the girl goes into that kitchen area and there's all these animal skulls and all this stuff. And the fact that they purposely did that to her, she didn't know that they were going to do that to her. So that was a real live reaction when she's basically coughing up, getting nauseous. That really happened. That's how they
directors don't get away with that no more.
I love that. That's my first time hearing that, JR. So thank you for that.
Yeah, she
That's
did
like
not
that William
know.
Franken type of directing right there.
Yeah, she went into that room and all that that room stunk so bad, and that was her real reaction to that sequence. And it has one of the most iconic sequences that is not even bloody. When, you know, she runs out the house and he grabs her. Everybody knows that image. That's probably the most used image of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when he opens the door and grabs her. And the funny thing too is when I went back to rewatch this, I was like, man, this is the first movie, one of the first movies where the main killer is getting basically disciplined. Because that dude was hitting them and you fool.
His brother?
You know, yeah, he's like hitting him, beating him, like,
I discovered it like you, GR, during kind of the midpoint of the 80s sometime. My brother had showed it to me. And of course, you know, when he showed it to me, he got to give me the whole backstory. So he talked about Ed Gein. He talked about like how this film was based on him. And the film says it's based on true events. So, I mean, it's based on Ed Gein, but most of the actual story itself is fictional. But I didn't know that when I was a kid. I thought it was real. And I thought this was almost, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but like a documentary.
It gives the OG feel of a found footage movie.
Yes, it does, because the camera work, it's like Joe had mentioned it. The camera is the fifth character in this movie, essentially. It's not going for nothing crazy or elaborate. It's just filming everything like if it's the fifth person in this group just filming them on their road trip. There's only one fancy shot in this film that really stands the test of time, and it's been replicated homage to death. But the classic scene when she's walking towards the farmhouse and you got the shot of her buttocks,
Yeah,
that's
and
been
the
done
walk.
to death.
Yeah, everyone.
But who? Tobe.
Tobe.
He's the originator of that. And yeah, so I thought this movie was real. I thought this was based on a true story. I thought Leatherface was real. I thought Ed Gein was Leatherface. I thought he was the guy that would kill people, put their faces on, got a chainsaw. I mean, yeah, he ate people, of course. He did all this horrific shit, but it wasn't as glamorized as it was in this film, with the family and all that. And this reminds me of the old rental days, because when I saw it, it's the old video store. Let's go to the video store. What they got, And we talk about influential films. I know Joe just appeared on Angel's show on Voices from the Mausoleum, the most influential movies series.
Almost on my list, by the way.
This was
almost on my list.
If you think of influential films in horror, right? Nothing on a personal level, but as a whole, Halloween, obviously, right? But when it comes to the dirty, the grittiness, like that whole southern feel of danger, it comes from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Rob Zombie's career is pretty much based on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you watch House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, all his films, they have elements of this fucking film. And not just him. The places you don't want to get stranded in late in the night and nobody knows where you're at. This is the film that started that. And when I saw it, man, I mentioned it. I thought it was real. And I like how JR mentioned the opening monologue in this film, the little text that you read on screen that's narrated by John Larroquette, which is my favorite story of this movie was
God.
John Larroquette was not paid for this film at all. He did not get paid for the voiceover. He got paid in a marijuana joint. They gave him a dude. He smoked a fatty. He's like, you know what? Don't pay me. Just let me get some of that weed. So that's a true story, bro. I fucking love it. The film, it builds until it crescendos at the very end of the film. And there's no gore. But what's implied is there's so much fucking screaming in this movie, especially at the dinner scene. And that shit pierces your ears, bro. It just does not stop. And that, to me, is more unsettling than seeing somebody's guts get spilled out onto the fucking floor, man. The sound design in this film is top notch. And that's what makes this film scary. The sound, like JR mentioned when she walks into that room with all the skeletons and just the way she's stepping on the floor with that shit, the cracking sounds. And nothing is over the top. It's not amplified. It just feels real. It feels like you're there. And the fact that I don't want to say that's the mindset that Tobe Hooper had. I want the viewer to feel like they're in this movie. It probably was, but
it probably was. And
if it was, mission accomplished.
That whole aspect that he did, it just still stands.
It does, and this movie still stands. This movie holds up. Let me ask you, when you rewatched this recently for this, did it stand up to you? Did it still feel old and old-fashioned? I think this movie's, it's got people talking because it's old and it's the first, but did it stand up and does it really live up to the hype, brother?
You know what it is about this movie is, take Leatherface out of the equation. This movie doesn't have memorable characters as memorable sequences. This movie's all about the sequences.
I was the killer.
Yeah, it's
I always remember that guy.
Yeah, like the characters, you're not going to sit there and remember the four people. I mean,
That's why I don't know. Other than Sally and Franklin, I don't know anybody.
Franklin was annoying, but anyway.
Very annoying.
Yeah, it was all about the sequences. It was all about the scenes. It was all about the environment. I mean, the one scene that made me squirm is when he took her and put her on the hook. I'm like, oh fuck, man, to this day it still makes me squirm.
And you know what's the perfect setup to that, JR? The conversation in the van when they're talking about the slaughterhouse.
Yes.
That was the perfect setup for that. Because when you don't see it, you hear it, but you think back to that slaughterhouse and what they do to those poor animals, bro. Yeah.
And you still, even when he put her on the hook, you didn't see the hook go in her back.
No.
He just but you know what? You did see the hook go in her back. Because when you put her up, your brain went, oh, fuck, that hook just went in her back. So you didn't have to see it. That's the brilliance of it.
And the thing is, when you go back and watch these films and these anniversaries, you go more back to one to enjoy the film, but to see if there's something you actually missed that you've never seen before. So you're sitting there looking at certain things that, all right, did I miss this? Like, this film still has one of the biggest mysteries to me for the ending film. And you want to know what? Guess what it is? It's the biggest question I have in this film.
Is it a truck driver?
That he survived. That motherfucker took off.
First of all, wait. So Leatherface scrapes on the door of his fucking semi-truck that can run Leatherface over. And they jump out of the truck.
My girlfriend mentioned that. I saw
they jump
her.
out of the truck.
Why'd they get
and run? And then the pickup truck fucking gets Sally. She doesn't bother to say, hey, so the truck driver, can you go help him out? Here we are 50 years later, and this is why it's where relevance holds up. You can watch this movie so many fucking times, and this is probably like the 30th time I've seen this movie. And I've realized, fucking truck driver, they were in a truck. They were safe. They could have just drove off. It wasn't going in there. He runs off. Sally left his ass. So this guy's still running down the highway.
So funny how this poor guy, this actor, he's like so out of shape. He's
oh my god.
That's what I liked about it, Joe. That's what I liked about it. He looked like a real guy. He didn't like some Hollywood hunk guy or some trucker.
No.
Like a regular dude, man.
Like, oh shit, I gotta run. Even though I can hit drive.
Not just that. He grabbed the wrench or whatever and smashed Leatherface with it. He made contact. Leatherface falls and he chainsaws his leg.
Yeah. Here she is like going crazy, and then they show Leatherface. You see the dude in the background still running.
He's still running,
He's still running.
Obviously the movie holds up. Horror doesn't have to be graphic. We like it, yes, I know. But however, you don't have to see it all. And the best directors make you see what they're trying to show you without showing you. I've talked to people about the movie and like, oh, well, when he hit the guy with the hammer, then he chopped him up. I'm like, no, you're remembering that wrong.
You're right, Joe. People do remember it wrong because the movie's so visceral and in your face, and you're so focused on on what's happening that you're not realizing that this is fucking terrifying. But you're not realizing they're not showing no blood, nothing. It's just It's just the experience that these characters are going through and the way it's shot.
When he got Franklin in the wheelchair and he's just going into him, you would have seen blood splattering everywhere in the movies that are done now.
What else, Joe? What else?
Entrails.
Yeah! All right, well, let's close this one now. Let's give us our ratings. Any final thoughts, JR? I'm gonna start with you, my brother, since you apparently you're the man around these parts. What up, son?
Well, before I talk about the film, me and Rick did this. It was our third film we did, and 2 films inspired the way we went about the kill scene.
Oh, good
one was
shout!
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh man, he
And the other one was In the Eyes of Her Mother. The scene where I get killed. We didn't show the hammer hitting me. We showed the blood. But then the next sequence was the killer just going to town on me from behind, and all you see is a constant. So we focused on that because...
And how did we shoot that, Jer? What was the one thing we had said to use?
The sandbag.
Yeah.
And
why?
Because of sound.
Yeah, that's because of movies like this.
We want to use your other senses besides what you see. It's what you hear, what you imagine.
Brilliance. It's the brilliance of this movie.
Yep.
Obviously, it's a 5.
Go for it, bro.
I'm gonna give my score. It's a 5. I mean, again, this is a blueprint in horror. A lot of people have imitated scenes from here. Again, it's a man with a chainsaw, which you never see him cutting off limbs. The only cutting happens when he drops the fucking chainsaw on himself.
That's what I said earlier. Yeah.
Right. He goes, "Arr!"
That's the only time I hear him talk.
That's it. He's like, "Arr!" Oh no, he did. It's funny because we talked about this before that I started leaving captioning when I watch movies now.
Yeah.
So when the brother's yelling at him, he's like, "Get back in there!" And you're like, "Okay." I'm like,
"Oh shit!"
I didn't know Leatherface fucking talked and answered back.
Yeah, you're right about that. He did.
He answered back.
This is a 5. It's come on. It's nothing more, nothing less. This is a 5. This is an absolute classic. A move that's been replicated to death. And it's gonna keep getting replicated. You mentioned the last film, the Netflix film. I enjoyed it because it had fun moments in it, but I could see the flaws now, looking back in retrospect. But the Marcus Nispel film, the actual remake with Jessica Biel, was very violent too, and they showed the gore.
It
was good. So it's not. You could do it with the gore in it, but that film was more like a homage to this one because so many elements were taken from it as a homage, but it gets to a point where all right, let's get some originality in it. But man, yeah, bro, I admit it. I'm not a fan of part 2 too much. I'm just not.
It went on.
It's right here. It's right here. Yeah, I'm not saying it's terrible. It's still a good movie. Yes, because if you go in wanting camp, but I don't want camp in a Texas Chainsaw film, in my opinion. And that's why I love part 3 because it's got my boy Ken Foree. Ken Foree is in it. Motherfucker! Such blasting. Anyway, I love fucking part 3 so much. And part 4 is funny because that's the debut of Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, I know.
It's so random having those two.
And it's bad. It's not even a great
bad.
movie.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
Before we go off, one of my coworkers at one of my last job, his last name was Hewitt.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The family's last name was Hewitt.
Hewitt, yeah.
And he's like, I did try to check to make sure that we're not related to those Hewitts.
I'm glad you brought that up, though. Because what makes this film stand out as opposed to the other ones, they gave us too much of Leatherface's backstory. You don't need that.
No.
Well, we got in this one with some crazy guy wearing someone else's... we didn't even talk about that. This guy's wearing someone else's face. Because if we know Leatherface, we know the story. But when this movie came out, there wasn't anything like it. So the fact that this guy's wearing a human skin on his face as a fucking mask... It's just...
And Leatherface comes from the fact that he's wearing somebody else's face, that it's lost the moisture, it's lost everything.
It's like a husk.
Making the face
leathery. Thank you, Joe. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Tobe Hooper, 1974. This is horror. This is raw horror in its purest form. That's all I'm going to say about that. With that being said, I'm Ricky Van. JR the Villain, and Joe the Psychologist. Come back next week for another episode of 3 Corners of Horror. Until next time, get them chainsaws revved up. Drink beer. If you don't, drink some apple juice. But be good, stay safe, stay healthy. But most of all, stay scared. JR, do it.
Ging, 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 ging.